The star fire configuration is when you have 4 relatively large logs. And you burn them gradually from the ends. The star configuration fire is a particularly good fire for giving out relative heat, but it's not a fire that's meant for keeping you particularly warm. It does provide great beds of embers, because as these logs burn, they'll provide a large ember base. It's excellent for cooking on. It's a very easy fire to cook on with pots and skillets and things like that, because the logs can generally take the weight of those kinds of things. You need a fairly abundant fuel source. It's a fire that's quite easy to build in places like large wooded areas where you've got access to large logs. Or also, I tend to find this to be a good fire in places like the coast. I tend to find on the coastline you'll get these large sort of pieces of driftwood. You don't get a lot of them, but you can usually get, 4 or 5 of them, enough to make a fire like this. It's a very long lasting fire, because all you have to do as the fire gradually burns, because the bed of embers will become so hot, all you're actually doing is sort of feeding the fire the ends of the logs as it burns. Another reason to construct a fire like this would be that you have access to these sort of large logs because you're in a wooded area and you've found dead wood, or you've snapped off some large branches, and this is the kind of size of logs that you're getting. But you haven't got a saw with you or a means to sort of split this wood down further. You haven't got a knife for whatever reason. So you're left with large logs. Now, you can do one of two things. You can build a very large fire where you use those logs in like a sort of traditional teepee type shaped fire, or try and build a sort of long fire. But all you're going to do is consume the wood at a much quicker rate, and probably for no real benefit, because a fire like that would be too hot to cook on. It's probably more labour intensive than what is required for 1 or 2 people. So if you want a small steady burning fire to cook on, and you haven't got a means to cut your logs down properly or split your wood, then this is the best way to do it. It's quite easy to sort of look after. If the fire was to die down to a point where I didn't think it was going to burn the logs, they're easily sort of, you can remove them, then you can get your fire more established again with more tinder, build up a tinder base, get yourself a decent sort of heat going, and then you would simply just replace your logs. Another good thing about this fire is once you get to a stage where it's the end of the night and you don't particularly want to maintain your fire anymore, but you would like it to burn a little bit longer, but you intend on having a fire the next morning, you could put the logs in just enough that you know this much of the wood is going to be consumed. It maybe take a couple of hours for that wood to burn, and what will happen is the ends of the wood will burn and it will create an ember base, but it will stop once it gets here. The fire won't continue, the logs will burn off, and in the morning you'll be left with a pile of embers and ash, and you'll have the 4 ends of your logs remaining. And the end of the log will be charred, and it's incredibly easy to get a fire going again with charred wood like this. It only requires a spark, just a single spark from your fire rod or your ferritiring stick, or even a lighter. Run it over the top of this where it's charred, and it will glow hot like that again. And then just by feeding it a little bit of oxygen, you can actually get a fire fully going there once that's fully established. The reason for that is got something to do with like the free radicals in the wood that allow the char to be able to catch fire again incredibly easy. Sort of like lighting sort of charcoal barbecue. Much easier than lighting, say, the actual plain wood itself that was uncharred.